Somewhere behind a mountain range that doesn't appear on any public map, there's a city with no name, no tourists, no signs, no satellites are supposed to see it, though they do anyway. If you disappeared tomorrow, your family would be told you were reassigned. That's the polite word for it here. Today, you become a citizen of that city. Welcome to the machine. Here's what nobody tells you about power like this. It isn't handed to you in a single dramatic moment. It's earned in inches. A fence today, a lab tomorrow, a launch pad after that. And every inch you climb, the ground beneath you gets thinner. So the question isn't whether you want the power. The question is whether you'll still be you by the time you're holding it. Let's find out. Let's climb. You arrive at 4 a.m. in the back of a truck with blacked out windows, along with 11 other conscripts who stopped making eye contact with each other about 2 checkpoints ago. Nobody explains where you are. Nobody has to. You already know this is the place your uncle warned you never to mention out loud, even at home, even to family, even in your sleep, because walls have a way of listening in a country like this. They take your papers first, then your name. What's left is a number, stitched onto a uniform that still smells like the last person who wore it. You are now a perimeter guard at a closed military city, one of those places that exists in every rogue state's darkest folklore, where the border isn't a line on a map, it's a kill zone with your name quietly attached to it. This is rank 1, the fence. You don't know it yet, but this is also the only rank where the danger is simple. From here, it only gets more complicated. Your first week is built entirely out of small, brutal lessons. Lesson 1, sleep is a resource, not a right. You rotate through 4-hour watches in weather that doesn't care about your opinion of it, staring out at wire fences and floodlights that turn the frozen ground the color of bone. Lesson 2, curiosity is a liability. One night, a convoy rolls through your checkpoint. Unmarked trucks, drums sealed and stamped with symbols you're trained to recognize but never discuss. Yellow cake moving under a tarp and an armed escort on its way somewhere deeper into the city than you're allowed to imagine. You log the time. You do not log the details. The soldier next to you catches your eye for half a second, then looks away like he's already forgotten what he saw. You learn to do the same. Lesson 3, and this one sticks with you the longest. A lapse in attention here isn't a write-up. It's not a warning, and it's not a demotion. 3 months in, a guard from the eastern gate simply stops showing up for his shift. Nobody says his name again. The official story is a transfer. The real story travels through the barracks in whispers. He'd fallen asleep during a routine patrol, and the security division decided that a man who sleeps on a nuclear perimeter is a man who can't be trusted with what he's seen. That's the moment the fence stops feeling like a boring assignment and starts feeling like a test you didn't know you were taking. So you stop counting the hours until your shift ends. You start counting the mistakes you haven't made yet. And it works. 6 months of flawless discipline and a supervisor, a quiet, tired-looking woman with clearance you can't even guess at, pulls you aside. She says the labs are short-staffed. She says you have the right kind of attention to detail. She doesn't say it's a compliment exactly. In a place like this, being noticed can go either way. You take the promotion anyway. Anything is better than the wire. You don't know that yet either? The lab complex is warm in a way the perimeter never was. A mechanical, humming warmth that comes from rows of tall, cylindrical machines spinning at speeds that would tear a man apart if he got too close. Nobody explains the math to you at first. They just teach you the rhythm. Watch the gauges, log the readings, report anything that doesn't look like yesterday. Slowly, in pieces, you start to understand the shape of what you're part of. Raw material becomes refined material. Refined material becomes something with a purpose. You're never shown the whole picture at once. That's deliberate, you realize. Nobody in this building knows more than their one piece of the puzzle. It's not incompetence, it's insurance. A scientist who only knows their own corridor can't defect with the whole blueprint in their head. The work is meticulous, exhausting, and strangely seductive. You start to take pride in precision you didn't know you had, catching a fluctuation in a reading before your supervisor does, tightening a process until it hums instead of groans. For the first time since you arrived, you feel like more than a number. And then, on a Tuesday that starts like any other, the room changes. Alarms don't go off. There's no siren. Instead, there's silence. The specific heavy silence of a dozen scientists all realizing the same thing at once and not knowing whether to celebrate or run. A chain reaction, sustained, controlled, real. Someone lets out a breath that sounds almost like a sob. Someone else immediately starts writing furiously in a logbook because in this place, joy is a luxury you record and move past quickly. You did this. You helped build this. That night, alone in your quarters, the pride curdles into something colder. You think about the fence. You think about the yellow cake under the tarp. You think about what this success is actually for. You didn't build a cure. You didn't build a bridge. You built one link in a chain that ends, eventually, with a mushroom cloud over a city that looks a lot like the one you grew up in, just belonging to someone else. You tell yourself it's for defense. You tell yourself the state needs a deterrent to survive in a world that would erase it otherwise. You almost believe it. You have to. Believing it is the only way to keep sleeping. A week later, an internal security officer visits your section. 2 of your colleagues are quietly walked out, not fired, not transferred, erased from the schedule the same way that guard from the fence was erased. The whisper this time is espionage. Nobody asks for details. Nobody wants details. You understand now why your supervisor never smiled when she promoted you. The breakthroughs and the purges run on the same clock in this place. For every success, someone becomes a liability simply for having been close enough to see it happen. You keep your head down, you keep working, and 6 months later, your precision earns you another promotion, this time out of the lab and into a program you've only heard rumors about, delivery systems. If the labs were about making something, the delivery program is about aiming at Uarkai, and that distinction sits differently in your chest than you expected it to. You're moved to a facility disguised as an agricultural research station, tucked into a valley chosen specifically because satellite coverage is weakest there during certain hours of the day. Your new work involves the engineering of re-entry systems and guidance telemetry, translating raw destructive potential into something with a flight path, a target, a countdown. This is where the abstraction ends. In the lab, the weapon was theoretical, a number on a gauge, a reaction in a chamber. Here it becomes geography, coordinates, range calculations that correspond to real coastlines, real capitals, real people who have no idea their morning commute is a data point in someone else's spreadsheet. The conflict that's been quietly building in you since the fence finally has a name. You are no longer defending anything. You are pointing something. You try to test fire your first internal doubts the same careful way you'd test any system, quietly, privately, without letting anyone see the fluctuation in your readings. You ask a senior engineer carefully, hypothetically, whether the program's deterrence framing still makes sense once the range extends this far. He looks at you the way the supervisor looked at you 6 months ago, not angry, assessing. Ask that question one more time, he says, and it becomes a security matter instead of a philosophy one. You don't ask it again, not out loud. The tests themselves are conducted at night in short windows between satellite passes that your section has mapped with obsessive precision. Every launch is a gamble against 2 enemies at once. Physics, which doesn't care about your deadlines, and perception, because the wrong flash of light on the wrong infrared sensor thousands of miles away can trigger a diplomatic incident that reaches all the way back to your director's office, and from there, sometimes back to you. 3 weeks before a critical test, a guidance component fails during a dry run. Nobody was hurt, nothing exploded. But the failure delays a launch window tied directly to a date the Supreme Leader himself is said to be watching. The engineer responsible, a man you'd shared meals with, whose daughter you'd heard about 100 times, disappears from the facility roster by morning. Sabotage, the official memo says. Nobody in the room believes that. Everybody in the room nods anyway. This is the moment the conflict inside you sharpens into something you can't talk yourself out of anymore. In this system, a mistake and a betrayal are treated exactly the same, because the difference doesn't matter to the men who write the memos. Only the outcome matters. And you are one hardware failure away from becoming somebody else's cautionary rumor. You could slow down. You could disappear into mediocrity, become invisible, avoid promotion, avoid attention, avoid the whole vertical climb that got that engineer erased. But invisibility has its own risk here. The ones who don't rise eventually get asked why not. And that question, in this city, doesn't have a safe answer either. So you do the only thing that's ever kept you alive in this machine. You get better. You become indispensable. And 9 months later, following a test that finally successfully threads the needle between engineering and geopolitics, you're summoned somewhere you never expected to go, into the inner circle itself. The room they bring you into doesn't look like a laboratory or a launch facility. It looks like a study. Dark wood, heavy curtains, portraits of men who built this state watching from the walls with painted, unblinking eyes. You are officially a director now. You have a title with weight in it, a driver, an apartment in a part of the closed city you didn't know existed, where the electricity never flickers and the food doesn't come from ration lines. You also have, for the first time, real proximity to power, and proximity, you learn fast, is the most dangerous currency in the building. Meetings here aren't about physics anymore. They're about leverage. How a successful test can be timed to coincide with a foreign election. How a leaked satellite image can rattle a rival's markets. How the program you built with your own hands has become less a weapon and more a bargaining chip, traded across a table you're now terrifyingly sitting at. You start to understand the court you've entered. The supreme leader's inner circle runs on a specific, exhausting logic. Absolute loyalty, publicly performed constantly. Breakthroughs are rewarded with medals and dachas. Suspicion, even unconfirmed, even unspoken, is rewarded with a car that never arrives to pick you up for work again. You watch it happen to a colleague 2 seats down from you at a briefing. One week, he's proposing an ambitious new testing timeline, confident, animated, the leader's attention resting on him like a spotlight. The next week, his seat is simply empty, and nobody at the table so much as glances at it. The meeting continues. The wargaming continues. The absence isn't even acknowledged, because acknowledging it would mean admitting that any one of you could be next. That's when the escalation stops being metaphorical for you. It becomes physical, immediate, present tense. You start rehearsing your own answers to questions nobody has asked you yet, justifying budget delays, justifying a technician's private doubts you failed to report, justifying your own hesitation months ago about the delivery program's range. You didn't think anyone had heard that conversation. In this city, you're no longer sure anything goes unheard. And then comes the test that changes everything. A full detonation, successful, unmistakable, registering on seismographs on the other side of the planet. Within hours, the state that erased your name and gave you a number is suddenly a name every foreign ministry on earth is saying out loud urgently in rooms you'll never see. You did this. You, the boy who once stood on a wire fence, counting the hours until his shift ended. For one single blinding night, it feels like triumph. They give you the final title without ceremony. No parade, no medal. Just a phone that never leaves your side. A codebook you're forbidden from photographing even in your own mind. And a chair at the head of a triad now fully operational. Land, sea, and air. Aimed outward in every direction at once. This is the top. There is no rank above this one except the man whose portrait will eventually hang beside the others on that study wall. And it is, without question, the loneliest place you have ever stood. The first real test of the seat comes 11 weeks into the position. A foreign warship strays accidentally, everyone insists later, but nobody's certain in the moment, into contested waters your government has quietly claimed as its own. Alarms move up the chain in minutes. Your phone rings at 2 a.m. For 6 unbearable hours, you sit in a windowless room lit by screens showing troop movements, naval positions, and radar returns, while advisors on either side of you argue in urgent, clipped voices about posture and resolve and the unbearable cost of appearing weak. Somewhere in a capital thousands of miles away, someone very much like you is sitting in an identical room, having an identical argument. You realize, with a clarity that feels almost violent, that every promotion you fought for, the fence, the labs, the launch pad, the study with the portraits, was building toward exactly this. A single decision, made under exhaustion and pressure, that could not be taken back once it was made. The weapon you helped build to guarantee your nation's survival is, in this exact moment, the only thing standing between calm and catastrophe. And you are the only person on Earth who gets to decide which one happens next. The warship changes course at 4:47 a.m. No missiles launch. No cities burn. The room exhales as one organism, and somebody, quietly, pours a drink nobody bothers to hide anymore. You did not press anything. That is the entire victory. Nothing happened. And somehow, that nothing feels heavier than anything you built to get here. In the weeks after, life goes back to something resembling routine, briefings, tests, the quiet choreography of a program running exactly as designed. You have everything now. Authority nobody in this state can question. A legacy already being written into textbooks your own children, if you're ever allowed to have any, won't be permitted to read honestly. But you notice something has changed in you that no promotion can fix. You check exits in rooms you used to walk into without thinking. You measure your own words the way you once measured centrifuge readings, for fluctuations, for anything that might be logged against you later. The paranoia you watched consume everyone above you on the ladder has, somewhere along the climb, become yours. You got everything the fence guard could have dreamed of. Power, proximity, a name that means something, even if it's still just a number to the men who write the history. You just didn't get to keep the person who started this climb. Here's the truth this whole ascent has been circling quietly since the first checkpoint. In a system like this, the weapon was never really plutonium, or centrifuges, or re-entry vehicles. The real weapon was fear, engineered with just as much precision, aimed in every direction at once, including inward, including at you. You spent your entire career building a machine designed to make the outside world afraid to move against your state. Nobody warned you it would also teach you to be afraid of your own government, your own colleagues, and eventually, quietly, in the dark, your own reflection. That's the price nobody puts in the recruitment poster. So, Supreme Director, Architect, Conscript, whoever you are by the time you're watching this, ask yourself the question this whole system was built to make you forget how to ask. Did you secure your nation's survival? Or did you spend your life building the very cage you now can't leave? Because somewhere out past that mountain range, with no name, the fence you once guarded is still standing. Someone else is on it right now, cold, exhausted, counting the hours, with no idea that the man giving the orders tonight once stood exactly where they're standing. The climb never really ends here. It just changes who's holding the leash.